Sometimes, a simple act of kindness from a total stranger can rewrite your entire story. This happened on a cold night in Manchester, and the whole UK can't stop talking about it. Before you scroll, listen till the end, because this one will touch your soul. Story. It was one of those wet and windy nights in November, the kind of night when the streetlights blurred through rain-soaked glass, and the world felt heavier than usual. Sophie Turner, 27, sat quietly on the last bus from London to Manchester, clutching a small duffel bag, everything she owned. She had just left her job, her flat, and a relationship that broke her more than it built her. She stared out the window, trying not to cry. But the reflection staring back at her looked exhausted, not just from the journey, but from years of holding on to things that weren't meant for her. When the bus stopped for a break halfway up the M6, most passengers went for a smoke or grabbed coffee. Sophie stayed inside, staring blankly ahead. That's when an older man sitting across the aisle, mid-60s, weathered face, kind eyes, leaned over. "You look like you've been through a war," he said softly, smiling faintly. Sophie laughed bitterly. "Feels like it." He nodded slowly. "You know, life does that. But buses have a funny way of taking us where we're supposed to be." Something about his voice was grounding, like he understood without her having to explain. They talked as the bus rolled on through the dark, about jobs, heartbreak, dreams left behind. He told her his name was Arthur Wells, a retired postman traveling to Manchester to visit his wife's grave. It would have been their 40th anniversary the next day. "She used to say," Arthur said, looking out into the night, "be kind, because you never know whose last bus you're on." Sophie smiled sadly. "That's beautiful." When they arrived in Manchester at dawn, the city was still asleep. Sophie had no plan, nowhere to go, no one waiting. Arthur noticed her hesitating by the exit and asked, "Got anyone meeting you?" She shook her head. "No, I'll figure something out." He paused for a moment, then said, "Come have breakfast with me. There's a cafe near Piccadilly she loved." "My treat." Sophie almost refused, but something about his warmth disarmed her. So she followed. The cafe smelled of coffee and toasted bread, and the windows were fogged up from the cold. They talked for hours. For the first time in months, Sophie laughed, really laughed. Before they parted, Arthur handed her a small envelope. "For when things get hard again," he said. Then he walked away, fading into the morning crowd. When Sophie opened the envelope later, she found a folded £20 note and a handwritten letter. Sophie, you said you lost your direction. That's fine, we all do. But remember, your story isn't over. Kindness is free. Give it often. You never know whose bus you'll be on next. Arthur Wells. She cried, not because of the money, but because someone finally saw her without judgment. That letter became her anchor. Sophie found a small room to rent, picked up shifts at a bakery, and slowly rebuilt her life. Within a year, she was managing the cafe, the same one where Arthur took her that morning. Every Friday, she reserved the corner table by the window, Arthur's seat, she called it. But then one Friday, she saw something on the news that froze her heart. Arthur Wells, 68, former postman from Kent, passed away peacefully in his sleep. The story mentioned how he was known for his kindness, helping neighbors, volunteering, always smiling at strangers. Sophie sat at that table, tears in her eyes, staring at the empty chair across from her. That evening, she posted her story online, how a stranger's kindness on a rainy night changed her life. She ended her post with Arthur's words. Greater than, be kind, because you never know whose last bus you're on. Within hours, the post went viral. Thousands of people shared their own stories of unexpected kindness. The hashtag the last bus to Manchester trended across the UK for days. Newspapers picked it up, radio stations talked about it, and cafes across Manchester started leaving notes on tables that said, "For Arthur, and for all the strangers who made us feel seen." Months later, Sophie was invited to speak at a local event about community kindness. She walked on stage, heart pounding, and looked out at hundreds of faces, each one a reminder that empathy still existed in the world. She smiled and said,